So, before even getting to this matchup, let's talk about these teams a little bit. Yesterday, we saw Prophet actually annihilating people on his Hanzo, on his Ashe. And Shanghai, obviously our Shanghai, we just watched a bunch of their games versus Shock. They're looking very strong. But Shock, especially when they have control of the game, seems to be very hard to shake control out of Shock's hands. And I think that's just where Shanghai showed they were overstepping a little bit, disconnecting their aggression a little bit, going for aggressive things that don't work out because of timing and stuff like that. But against Seoul, I think Shanghai's style should be their generally defensive style, somewhat similar to Shock. It should be more effective versus Seoul because we saw Seoul being over-aggressive a lot of time, over-committing in areas that they shouldn't be, gesture, going on really aggressive movements that in very, what I would say, punishable ways. But it seems to be in an attempt to catch people off guard with, I don't want to say over-aggressive play, but unexpectedly aggressive play. So I'm hoping to see from Shanghai, see that, and not just play the same way they were playing against Shock, where they're finding their own openings, but they're leaving some breathing room for Seoul to overcommit to things, and then looking to punish that, similar to how Shock would play. Do I normally watch Overwatch from an analytical standpoint? Do you only do that for VODs? I find it kind of hard to not watch things from an analytical standpoint. Overwatch things, at least. When I watch like other esports even, I tend to like try and think about what the game plan is for players going into it, even if I'm not super familiar with the game. Like I used to watch a ton of CSGO. I watch some Valorant now and I try to like at least put myself in like the player's shoes and think about like why they're doing things. Just because I find that interesting. I think games are really interesting when you look at them at a deeper level. The difference, the one game I would say I don't think that way would be Smash Bros. Because I just love watching Smash Bros. And people just make sick plays, and I don't really care about how they get there because it just looks cool. But yeah, in general, watching any esport, but especially Overwatch, I tend to be pretty analytical. I mean, these streams are basically just a stream of consciousness about what I'm thinking, how I'm reacting to watching these things. This is not me like going in depth or anything like that. It's just watching the games, seeing how they play out, trying to figure out why things happen the way they did and stuff like that. So yeah, let's look at this first fight. Lip on Sombra.
Normally be Fleder on the Tracer, but instead now Lip on his world-class Sombra.
So to me, this composition should have the advantage. And basically that's only for one reason, and that's Lip should be able to give their frontline space advantage by threatening hacks, threatening backline pressure, and stuff like that. Yes, there's more damage, there's more front-facing damage, there's more AoE damage on Seoul's side, but especially for this first fight, unless they win this first fight and take full control, I don't think they're going to be able to leverage double hit scan properly against this tank line, and I think Sombra is going to do more to pressure these tanks out of position and pressure them into punishable positions more, just because of the threat of hack. So you can already see Prophet. Yeah, again, look at all the space DM has versus Fitz died. But Fitz does not have the same space because he's worried about DM on the flank, and there's no one on Seoul's team that can go pressure DM other than Fitz and Prophet, whereas Lip on Shanghai's side can look for punishing aggressive DPS players. If, for example, Fitz was playing all this way forward, Lip can just go duel him if he sees that play happen. And the reason I think we don't see Fitz going for this aggressive angle is because they see the Sombra pick.
You have got to be kidding me.
DM is a monster. Like, as much as I could talk about like this comp difference and like the reason they're playing this way, this fight was won because DM just clicked 5 heads, and that was insane.
Yeah, that is spectacular. You've got to put respect on DM's name.
But again,
now the
just having a Sombra inherently wins you this frontline fight because you have got more options for pressuring them and more threat in a hack than you do from just raw damage. How's the analysis going? What's up, Jane? It's going fairly well. I may have skipped over the Philly game because I didn't want to relive that. But, so far so good.
Resurrect will be able to come off here, so stand one in position once more to really take a lot of space. And another quick and easy team
Okay,
fight
Prophet.
win now for the Shanghai Dragons.
And again,
Losing this first team fight as
if
well
I'm
is
comparing
so
Shanghai to
brutal for
Shock
Seoul
in this
Dynasty,
matchup,
means that
like, I think Shock should win this matchup 10 times out of 10, based on playstyle from what I've seen in the playoffs, unless Seoul change up their style readily enough. I think Shanghai has the capability of playing a lot like Shock, playing a very defensive and reactive style, and that's what I'd like to see from Shanghai at this point of the game onward. But what I think happens, from what I remember watching this live, is they make these over-aggressive plays and they go for these things like EMP plays and stuff like that and end up overcommitting in areas.
Prophet's going to be using Bob, as you can see, just to contest the point up. They are going to get the flip off as well. Shanghai opting to just give up the space. And
So I like this a lot. But again, I don't think there's any reason to fully give up the point. If they have someone like a Tracer or a Ball just run over and touch point, someone who you can't chase down, this is fine, because it's like you can't overcommit to that anyway. You don't want to give up the space. But they have 3 people. Sorry, that's a Bob. They have 2 people over here. I think this needs to be answered faster. And I think this is a symptom of Shanghai trying to overcommit to this aggression rather than doing what Shock would do and mark these 3 lanes effectively. And play a mix-up game about who's marking where, how your Hog and Sigma are positioned. But I don't think you need to be looking for an aggressive play here if you're Shanghai.
And they end up punishing Marvel instead, just pressuring that and taking up as much space as they can. Lip now gonna
They do get the kills, and they are going to win this fight for it. But I just think that's unnecessarily... It's weirdly slow, but it's also weirdly aggressive in a weird timing.
Off the back of DM's quick shooting, it's made quite easy.
DM is on fire.
Yeah,
Absolutely on fire.
Yeah, DM
3 kills in that fight as well.
DM is definitely one of the best Widowmaker players in the world, and he's showing it.
In the middle of this engagement. By the way, Brent, DM is playing into 2 snipers here. He's playing into a Widow and an...
I don't really like that take from Sideshow right now. Yes, he's playing into 2 snipers, but realistically, these snipers have no space to work with. Prophet had to do a wide flank while his team was pressuring here to get any space around the point, and then he still found no value other than just capping the point. He found no DPS value from being there, so he wasn't really a threat. He just capped the point. The fact that Seoul have no space to work with, and I think is showing why Double Sniper in this case is kind of weak, is because you don't have the tools to retake in the same way that Shanghai does with the Sombra.
And this is what you need to be playing like, I think, to shut down the Seoul Dynasty's DPS line. The fight continues, though, as ults are going to start to be coming out. Lips
Again, another really aggressive play here from Shanghai, trying to go aggressive with the EMP and with the Sigma ult, and I think this is where it's going to start hurting them the most.
Stop them as the Resurrect comes through. Lee Jae-gon managing to get that one off, but Marvel
Stabilized and
comes
then
through,
just
clutching
re-engaged
once more.
by Seoul.
3 kills for him. Should be a nice team fight win for the Seoul
Yeah, Seoul
Dynasty.
very ready for that one.
Has the Resurrect available.
Go, Toby.
Just really get it off though. He's going to opt for it. A bit
Wow.
risky, actually, with Prophet being
That was I was very scared for Prophet actually, but good res, and yeah, really good turn from Seoul. And now Shanghai actually has to deal with the threat of Double Sniper because you're not going to be able to dislodge. I mean, it's going to be hard to dislodge even one of them. I mean, DM getting these headshots helps for sure, but it's going to be very hard to deny value from Prophet and Fitz. But if you kill everyone else, I don't think that really matters.
This round, potentially trying to bring down Marvel. They do get it in the end. Prophet's got to come up big now.
Nice little kill from Prophet, but
which is a great start for them.
Good cap.
Fitz
Good retake.
now onto the high ground.
Oh, my Prophet and Fitz. They've taken Shanghai's side of the map. Okay, so this is exactly why Shanghai didn't come to point when they were fighting here 2 fights ago. When they were fighting with their EMP and pushing through towards Seoul side of the map. They did that because they risked staying in this open area by going back to point, by hard committing back to point. Like sending Sombra back is not hard committing. But if they spent their whole team back and focus solely on the point, they open themselves up to these kind of angles. And they would have opened themselves up to the similar angle from Prophet shooting from here. So I'm not sure why this decision is being made, especially for the Roadhog. I mean, I get that he can't really like contest the Widow up here, but I think the tanks especially need to be the ones thinking about these threats and should not be the ones focusing solely on the payload. On the capture point, not payload. But yeah, and I think that's going to cost him this cap. Because look at these picks. Completely uncontested right now. And like I said, like Shanghai won that fight. At least they should have won that fight, but they didn't finish it off. They didn't really take the necessary steps to really retake all of the map. They just killed a bunch of people and then they said, okay, we're done. And most notably, I think Stand and Void needed to be the ones being more proactive in dislodging those members. They need to know that as long as those threats are alive, it's a turnable fight. Similar like how you'd play against Shock. As long as one of their threats are alive, and there's so many threats in these comps, you can't count them out. EMP, okay, it gets... I remember this now. That's tragic. It probably wouldn't have worked out great for them anyway, but they definitely had a chance to win that fight. And if they'd won that fight with that EMP, it probably would have won the map because they'd have map control. That's a rough one.
The point time the series begins. Actually, just that one EMP towards the end. The other one was wasted in the middle of the round, and
so Soul committing to the Hog on this point as well. The reason why you'll see Shock and Dragons using this ball instead of Hog is because of Hog's limited area of influence and because of how wide this map is. Realistically, every fight's going to take place within this big box, right? But it could happen at any point during these boxes. Most likely, it's not going to happen on point, especially the first fight. It's going to happen during these wide rotations, and that's why characters like Widow are super good, but also why characters like Ball are super good. Because you're going to be looking for more uptime rather than the most immediate impact. And what I mean by more uptime is being available to fight more often. And when you're Hog and you're just like walking around, not only is it going to be hard to close the distance because you're not very mobile, but it's going to be very predictable and very easy to kite you out for anyone on Shanghai Dragon's team. For anyone to just see where Hog is and then walk away is a very easy thing to do, and it's even easier if they're playing with Void's shield. So yes, there's a ton of threat coming in from this Hog, but unless you're within like 15 meters of where Hog is playing, then he's not going to be able to do anything to you. And you can basically just try to waste his time for as long as possible, wait for someone like Stan to find a disruption boops or a slam on a backline member, wait for someone like DM to find an opportunity to get a free angle, and he can play just completely isolated from the rest of his team because there's no individual threats. There's no Tracer hunting him down. There's no Ball hunting him down. It's only going to be the DPS angles he needs to worry about. So he can play wherever he wants at this point. So this frees up DM a lot. It means Stan's going to find more aggressive opportunities than Gesture is, but it also means that if Shanghai Dragons commit to the wrong fight and Gesture's available to fight, basically, then he's going to just walk through your team. So there's pros and cons to this comp, but for this map, I like this comp a lot more. I'd actually prefer to see Lip on something like a Sombra or a Tracer. But I like this comp a lot more. I like the Ball a lot more than the Hog.
Unusual Ash head-to-head, to be honest. I don't know who would really have the edge, but DM has... my money is always on that guy.
Well, yeah, there's DM. Again, there's no one even... It's impossible for anyone to pressure DM. Like, Gesture's going to walk at him and throw a hook. If DM's a heads-up player, which I can guarantee you he is, he's going to be very aware of Hog's position, and he's going to be playing around it. And unfortunately, Hog can't use his hook to grapple to terrain like Widow can. So he's not going to be able to keep up. DM. And yeah, the longer it takes for Soul to find a proper engage, which could be indefinitely if Shanghai plays perfectly, then the more time DM has to take shots, the more time Izayaki and Lip have to take shots. and the more time Stand 1 has to try and isolate and disrupt people.
Getting crucified by their fans for running the hog in, running the wrecking ball instead of the hog.
This map, out of every Koth map, I can't think of another Koth map that would be as disadvantageous to hog as this one.
To put more pressure onto the enemy snipers and offer up more room for DM, for Lip to be able to do their work and just have Void kind of playing the objective. It does mean that Gesture has room to go on flanks.
Even maps, like other open cell maps like Oasis City Center, have key areas that would be important for Hog to mark, that teams would like to run through. But this map is so open, you can even run like across the point and still be out of range of Hog.
Completely risk-free as well. As you see, Stand 1 has to be careful. He can't get hooked, accretioned, or anything.
Damn, Lip popping off too.
When the space is given, I mean, Shanghai are not going to be letting it go.
Again, Shanghai don't even need to make aggressive moves because the onus is solely on Soul to really disrupt these important members from Shanghai's backline.
Could be the beginning of a
Just please don't overcommit to Gesture. That's all you need to do. Oh, even through the nano.
I believe the nano boost is applied to him, but not enough. With the damage boost in the Discord orb, he just gets obliterated on the sidelines.
Again, Gesture was like trying to walk through there because he's trying to control more of the map, and he thought with nano boost with his E available it'd be enough to survive, but apparently not. Not when you're that disconnected from your team. No shields for him. No, I mean, Ana healing, but that wasn't enough.
Because Stan 1 and Void are denying them that map control, so the Resurrects can always come out. And this is
90% now for Shanghai.
Beautiful idea of how the Soul Dynasty play. Something that Jonathan was talking about during the desk segment, actually, is just that Shanghai can completely counter Soul Dynasty. They only play one style. It's a nice pick from Fitz, but at the end of the day, Shanghai, they're still in control of the point.
When Scyther says Soul only plays one style, I'm assuming he means when it comes to this composition. Lee J gun.
Oh my goodness. Or would be finding a couple of pickoffs, a last ditch bob, but it won't be enough, surely.
Yeah, full control by Shanghai, really well played. Mecha base is going to be a lot more favorable for the Hog. I think both comps are viable there, but it's at least going to give Gesture something to do other than run around the map without getting anything. So that's good for Dynasty to be able to go to this third map. Oh wait, fighter restarted, my bad.
As well. I mean, it's a label we apply to him, the battle merc.
So something we saw Shanghai do against Shock was catch their backline off guard with really aggressive diving by Stand and I think it was Lip on Tracer. No, it was Fleta on Tracer. But they're not playing Fleta, they're not even playing Tracer, so Stand's job is going to be a lot more defensive. They know Gesture's going to be on Hog because, like Josh said, they're pretty one-dimensional with this composition. So, keeping that in mind, Stand's job is going to be a lot more reactionary and looking for opportunities on the backline, even though he's got no follow-up, just to disrupt their value in the mid-fight.
Suppose going in for those aggressive business.
Yeah, they're going to be able to deny a lot of space just by having a faster rollout here.
The way he likes to play that main support role, so aggressive at times.
Marvel's in on the ball.
New round now, a new opportunity for either side. It's 1-1. Right down to the wire here.
Not having a Sigma of their own means Gesture's going to have a harder time getting in, especially when it comes to retake situations, but he's going to be, these two tanks are going to be very influential in the mid-fight as individuals. Prophet is just cleaning up.
3 kills in the fight already for the Tracer God of Prophet.
So like these tanks don't have a lot of synergy, but they have a lot of individual value. So you can't like shield your Hog up to get an aggressive hook, you can't retake space very well together, but you can pressure very different areas of the map at the same time and find a lot of individual value and threat in that way. On the flip side, Stand can also look for aggressive value on his own on backline, but Void can play not strictly defensively, but he's going to have to react a lot to how Gesture's playing and make sure his team's not being basically like taken advantage of by Gesture's aggression. But yeah, this more defensive playstyle from Shanghai, this more absorption, I think is going to pay play really well in this matchup, especially with no Sigma on Soul's side, because they just lack the tools to really get in. They've got this sort of half and half comp where some of them want to hard commit, some of them want to set up for positioning and look for opportunities. But either way, Shanghai's got more range threat, and they've got a lot, not the best, but they've got a lot of peeling opportunities and resources to keep them alive during these engages.
To work with. Prophet's going to be looking for any sort of kill he can get on the backline, but forced back through the recall.
Goodbye, Fitz. Anyone that tries to peek out alone can get focused stand by stand. Nice peeling from Gesture to burn him down, though.
Great opening. Possibly potential now to convert this into something a little bit more, but with Marvel going down, you've lost one of your tanks, and it is so scrappy from Soul.
Yeah.
There's really no
I'm not sure why they're not playing Sigma here.
To try and get a nice clean push off. It is a lot of individualistic plays coming out from Soul Dynasty, and it's been like this the entirety of the Grand Finals thus far.
It is very individual, and it's almost like reliant on picks, which is somewhat viable in these kind of comps because they are very threat heavy, and there is a lot of opportunities for picks to happen, but it's not consistent when you need to break through these chokes, when you need to retake space, when you need to play against these top teams who are so good at marking threats.
And they're just getting stuck in this choke point.
Gesture, as often as he throws out these hooks, he's not getting the value, and Bob not going to be touching the point, which forces Marvel down to the low ground, but
Fitz finds two.
Capable of taking matters into his own hands now. 2 kills, searching for the third onto Lee Jae Gong, will not get it.
Oh, he misses the slam.
Shanghai Dragons are still not out.
They aren't out by any means here. Lee Jae Gong healing Lip up.
Oh my god, Lip just lives.
Marvel. He's overextended without the help of Prophet. Again, searching for different targets in the middle of the team fight.
You see how individually focused when you say like Marvel and Prophet playing different targets as the only 2 diving members shows to me that neither of those people are really designed to be the fight winners. Fight winners are typically going to be Fitz from a strong position given by Shanghai forced to give up space from the amount of threats coming at them. Fitz can just walk into free space, and also Gesture. They didn't get the flip.
As Lip does get the return kill onto Prophet on the flank, but eventually Shanghai realize they need to cut their losses and just back off for the time being.
They can try and come back in here. The mines are fairly good at trying to be able to isolate.
Not a lot of ult pressure from Shanghai, and again, with no flanker on their side, it's going to be hard to really take back a lot of space, but Soul not even really pressuring that much space. That surprises me. Gesture drops down the 2 towards point. Okay, DM gets caught out. 2 kills back and forth. Oh, that's unlucky timing. Bob gets walled off by the map. Toby is 1v1ing, and he gets the kill? Okay, Toby, I see you. Very back and forth map, but Shanghai find the flip. Gesture's back on Winston, so now they're basically a full dive comp. Ooh, his dynamite doesn't go off. Lip's dead. That's going to be a flip. DM coming back on Tracer. Stan fell off the map.
Yeah, DM's been forced to flex over to his Tracer. Has been good in the past, historically an excellent hero for him, but he hasn't played it in so long. Is he even in form? The rest of the Shanghai Dragons are flooding out.
Again, I'm very surprised by the lack of forward pressure from Soul.
And DM's kill Gesture.
So smart though, Izzyaki, the Transcendencer leads them in, the Resurrect gets disjointed. So Toby didn't manage to get it off, Gesture not back in the fight, that could be critical. DM with the pulse bomb in hand, looking for a target, he finds one, and it's
no.
Good, but
the flip comes through, and they gap.
The Shanghai Dragons, off the back of some heroics.
After almost a tragic loss to a C9 on downtown, that was a very close map for them, and I think a lot of that is due to just how much pressure. I don't even know. Soul looked really weird. Like, it didn't look like they should be finding as much value as they were, but Fitz was kind of popping off with the amount of space they were creating. And maybe that's just their game plan. I'm not entirely sure. Where even if Gesture's getting marked heavily, he's playing so split from his team that they're committing their resources for only Gesture, and the rest of his team have more space to work with. And that even though Marvel and Prophet weren't syncing up their dives or anything, they were creating enough space with their individual pressure
Good.
to really allow Fitz, and I guess Izayaki too,
Be certainly very back and forth
to really find
teams. We're going to find out. Can the Seoul
space
Dynasty
to work with.
Because that's where Seoul have been generally favored.
Or sorry, not
getting a few
Izayaki.
of their
Fucking
wins. Taking
was Creative playing that
Shanghai to
round? I
Kings
don't even
Row
remember now.
continues, though.
Yes,
Results are gonna
Creative.
start to be coming out.
Sorry.
Because that's where Seoul have been generally favored.
So, Kings
getting a
Row,
few of their
again,
wins.
Seoul picking Kings Row into Shanghai. I know how this turns out, so I'm not going to call it out too much, but it's an interesting choice knowing how dominant Shanghai has been on Kings Row.
Because
And it's worth pointing
I
that
feel
out.
like Void is going to eat them up. This guy, when it comes to Kings Row, is just dominant on high grounds.
Fitz had a nice little angle there, but a shield will mitigate any sort of damage now. See the Shanghai Dragons just trying to take that positioning. The rotations come through. The shields from Void just keeping his team alive, as the high ground is currently just being gained.
Lots
here
of
for the Shanghai
respect
Dragons.
to these
Not really
snipers.
being pressured, or not really willing either to be giving up too much space. And double sniper at this first point of Kings Row. It's all about trying to get this opening element. One pick from either of the teams can be enough.
They tried to take the high ground there, the Shanghai Dragons, and instead they're going to have to make the long way around. Lip just making sure the Gesture can't take
Ooh,
it too
Gesture
far
gonna get
out.
punished.
What a sleep coming out from Izayaki. I don't think a punish is going to be possible there.
Bioneate! Wow.
Really nice
That's
punish.
so class, being able to punish Gesture. And this is
Really
exactly
nice
what we were talking
double
about. The
aggression.
Shanghai
So we
Dragons
we
with the
saw.
discipline to be able
Give me a
to
third-person camera.
kind of, take in this aggression that Gesture's been outputting at all.
So we saw as soon as Void and Stand were pushing up here, Lee Jae-gon and Lip both dropped and played the statue, and then as soon as Gesture threw out his hook, they pressured through Hotel. They find that sleep. I think Izayaki played statue as well. I didn't see him on camera. But it's a split aggression, and they're calling out Seoul for not being able to mark all of their aggressive points at the same time. They're not going to be able to mark DM, Lip, Stand, Void at the same time. So these two are playing together. These two are playing separate angles. Lip was going aggressive with Lee Jae-gon. Stan was going aggressive with Void. It's a lot to deal with. And unless you're someone like Shock, who seemingly has set plans to dealing with that kind of aggression, and are able to make on-the-fly decisions about where to push and where to give up space, very easy to catch people off guard, like Gesture getting slept, like Marvel getting picked out, like this whole high ground getting forced out and opening up angles for DM and Lip. Really well played, really very obviously practiced execution from Shanghai, really tight movement and everything, really tight timings,
Okay, we can't contest this at the moment.
really good stuff.
They look like they're not even in position to try and recontest this. They don't even want to touch checkpoint A.
No, not at all. I mean, they've lost all positioning on the map, and the Shanghai Dragons have set their snipers up in angles. So once that happens, it's very difficult to be able to get back in. Gesture looks like he wants to go for a flank at the moment, but he has been getting punished quite a lot in this series. Without his playmaking, the Seoul Dynasty's efficacy goes down a lot in the middle of these team fights, and much more of the responsibility ends up being on Prophet's shoulders. Here he comes, though, around the top.
Oh, the rock in the window.
The rock coming straight through the window to collect that kill. Lee Jae-gon almost went down as well, but it's okay. They got to resurrect off, and now
I really wish I could see what was happening.
Just working his way.
How is Stand getting this much pressure?
Here he comes, though, around the top. Ends up getting Lip with the help
So
of
during this time, it looks like Shanghai's pushing bottom right here into this alleyway and forcing this sort of split pressure. So Prophet's up here in this window looking for aggression in the backline, but this isn't really where Shanghai's fighting. No one's on point, no one's really in this open space. They're already pushing through here into this flank pressure. And that's leading Stand to win this duel.
To collect that kill, Lee Jae-gon almost went down as well.
Finds the kill on Marvel, finds the kill on Gesture. Seemingly like on his own. And I think it's because neither Fitz nor Prophet were focusing in that area. And it seems like, well, Toby was with Prophet. I'm not sure where Creative was to the point where he couldn't support his tanks. It's possible that Gesture was just overcommitted there, and then Marvel got caught trying to support him.
Nice little cleanup for him, the two-piece. And Seoul Dynasty struggling here off the back of just really from the get-go. Shanghai Dragons.
Yeah, really good pressure from Shanghai.
Positioning in space, just kind of emitting an aura of death as they approach various sections of the map. And Seoul Dynasty, of course, you have to respect the Shanghai Dragons. If you don't, I mean, it's going to be a quick and easy team fight win.
Yeah, Shanghai is so principled in the way that they take map control, especially on maps like Kings Row and Volskaya. It's what makes them arguably the best.
Again, look how much space Seoul's working with right now. They've forced themselves behind this line. They're popping walls right now, but they have no opportunities to go aggressive. if any one of these lanes gets pushed, it's going to be a long time before the other can follow up because they don't have control of high ground. They don't have more control of the map like this alley, brewery, different areas of the map. That being said, though, Shanghai kind of forced themselves into a similar bubble where they're just completely giving up space themselves. And yeah, why were they waiting for so long? They were waiting at the walls, I guess, but they need to be expecting some sort of aggression. They didn't even have like angles holding like sightlines. Like they didn't even know people were coming through that alley. They didn't know people were pushing through main at the same time. That was weirdly sloppy from Shanghai. It looked like they were grouping so they could push up this high ground, but then they just didn't. Like, look how slow they are. And yeah, they're just being corralled into this high ground. If they had been more coordinated in this movement, they would have Void Shield to push out Fitz. And they wouldn't even be worried about getting hooked on the backline because they would have already been making that rotation. I think that's just really slow decision making and really poor reaction to a Widow ultimate out of anything.
DM's already forced out the Resurrect with his Infosight.
Yeah, it's going to require some more risky plays, honestly. The Dragon Strike to try and split them up onto the cart. Lip doesn't get too much value, but he does force them back just through this choke point. Gesture, you can see him going for the flank, misses the hook in the back line, and now it's going to be leading the initiation in with the Gravitic Flux. Does catch onto one as Void will connect onto Marvel. Lip winning this 1v1 as Prophet had to go for the flank, and this is this kind of high-risk, high-reward playstyle that Seoul Dynasty like to play. It's going to be
the coordination from Shanghai's front line is just out-tempoing the value Gesture is going to find, and it's not setting up Prophet and Fitz the same way it was doing on Koth, because they just got less space to work with overall, because they're not setting them up in the pre-fight, and then by the time Shanghai's choosing to go aggressive, because they have time to work with, because there's not enough pressure from Seoul in general, they're finding good timings to go aggressive.
That the counterplays are there, ready in the playbook. And that's what it feels like so far in this series, is that Shanghai just have a read on everything they want to do, plus the fact that Lip is getting the better end of Prophet repeatedly, as he does again there and forces Prophet away.
Dragon Strike straight through the flank, and he does collect it onto
again,
Creative.
Gets a kill with that Dragon. The Dragon Strikes from Lip have been on point.
Just to get the nano boost off.
Typically in these kind of comps you see like pretty basic uses for Dragon Strike, like either to push yourself through a choke, to deny a res, but Lip's use in coordination with his team's aggression has been like forcing people into the Dragon the same way you'd force people into a Widow sightline. Really well done.
And Josh, you gotta think.
I just don't think this Prophet is against Fusion.
Against them in week 14 of the
All right,
regular season.
Toby.
They've come close a couple of times, but ultimately it's always been the Shanghai Dragons.
More mirror. A little bit surprised Shanghai's not doing the Zen on defense.
Dynasty have got to come up big, something new.
But maybe they're looking to punish Gesture a lot with Diana.
Yeah, I need to see some more magic from Prophet. I feel like he has to be the playmaker here. Creative's Bionades have still been pretty good. Gesture's been getting shut down.
A little more
by
basic
Shanghai's
of a
strategy.
take here
It's on
from
Prophet.
Seoul. The danger, of course, of playing just on the low ground and not taking the time to force this high ground means DM and Lip most likely are going to be unpressured except by enemy DPS timing. So unless they get peaked at the wrong time, there's not going to be a lot in their face. Maybe Marvel throws a shield at them and like blocks their view for a second, but they can just reposition around that or just wait it out because Marvel likes to have a shield with them to deny hog hooks and stuff like that. So it's not going to be hard for DM and Lip to hold angles here. I'm curious to see how Seoul is going to really get into the point without forcing them off.
It does sometimes come down to as little as that.
If there was anyone to do it, it would be Prophet alongside Fitz.
Looks like they might be focusing on building Nano more than anything.
While Fitz pressures Void off the high
Oh no, Void.
Damage there onto Void. This is a beautiful angle. That's a
Not sure why Izayaki, if Void is opting to go aggressive here, I say aggressive just like away from the corner with his shield down. Wasn't like making any crazy plays or anything. There's no reason for him to die there though. I hope Lee Jae-gon doesn't go for this res. Okay, yeah. They need to know that they're pushing there. A lot of just poor decision making from Dragons.
Not just that, but just so smart. They realize they get
One, no reason for Void to ever die to that Widow. He knew Widow was there before he started shifting. No excuse to die to that Widow. Lee Jae-gun, no reason to go for that res. Izayaki, no reason to be not healing Void if he's going for an aggressive play. But again, if he didn't call that he was going, he was getting pressured or anything like that, then of course Izayaki's not going to be ready to respond to it. Just really out of sync and really uncharacteristic. This is maybe like a symptom of them having a long day.
You can craft strategies that wouldn't work against everybody, but are specifically excellent against one specific opponent.
Again, Dragon just to deny the res. It doesn't deny the res, but it does get the kill on Toby eventually. But again, Shanghai's really struggling to dealing with this split pressure. This is like, again, I think they just need to play a little bit slower. I really like to see Stand and Void just covering more ground, really lining up their positioning so that they can cover different flanks. Nice shot from Prophet. And just deny Gesture from walking up on you, deny Prophet from getting this value positions, and find opportunities for DM and Lip to just have as much uptime as possible, because you don't need to make crazy plays on defense. Not with this comp, at least. You don't need to make crazy aggressive plays if you're Stand or Void. You should just be focused, at least versus Soul, I would say, you should be focused on marking their different types of positions, and then once they show their hand, then you can look for aggressive options or just some sort of counterplay, instead of just... It seems like they're always trying to get Stand and Void in aggressive positions themselves, and DM and Lip are paying for it.
The recon arrow was going to give them a lot of vision, a lot of information as well to work with, so they know exactly what they're going to be handling. And now look at this, the Rabbinic
He's going to get hooked.
Comes through into the Dragon Strike. It's a wonderful combo, but it doesn't net them any kills. Still Gesture.
Not sure how DM went down, but again, I think it's mainly due to the fact that Stand and Void aren't covering enough ground. If they don't have the space to work with, they should be focused on retaking key areas of the map, like this high ground area, like the alley flank, and then once those areas are secured, then they can split up and cover more ground. Or they just need to all in into pushing through an area and taking space away from Gesture and Prophet, honestly. And now Soul's just like running through them, because like Shanghai's not taking the time to set up properly around these key areas of the map. They're not coordinating enough timed aggression between their tanks and their DPS line, and they're really just giving up these fights to, like, they're getting hooked, they're getting dragoned, they're opening themselves up to things that normally are very easy to play around. Nice hook onto Gesture there, but Void's traded out, and the res comes through for Gesture. There's not enough pressure right now, because again, look, there's no space to work with right now. They're already forced back. Like, yes, the Dragon came through, but if Stand and Void were making that coordinated play to push out Gesture, and they can't even maintain the space that they just took, that to me just looks like really discoordinated play. Like, the DPS line was not ready to capitalize on them pushing out Gesture at the same time that they were pushing out, so they didn't have the support to hold that space once they took it. And this is going to be the point cap for Soul. Really just a snowball map, like, the whole way through. Second point barely even happened. Third point barely even happened. First point was because Void overextended and didn't have any support. Very, very weird showing from Shanghai. And again, this might be a symptom of them having a long day, just having played a 5-map series versus Shock. But goodness, you can't play this sloppy against a playoff level team. And look, like, Void's trying to punish their aggression, but who's going to even try and follow up? They didn't take the time to take the space before they got engaged on.
Think about that, gap closing with the enemy hook. Like, that's the kind of creativity that Soul can showcase with their ults.
Yeah, and we saw, you know, certain teams as well, like Philly, try and kind of outplay that, I suppose, by playing the Diva, just to have something to mitigate some of the factors with the Bionades coming through. But ultimately, it's just one piece of the working machine that is Soul Dynasty. And shutting down that one piece often isn't enough. On the defense now, as it switches back around, another hook comes through, and
Stan getting hooked. Again, like,
it switches back, shutting down that one piece often isn't enough.
I'm not sure what they're going for with this positioning, but if they're not ready to push through Hotel, why is Stand peeking Hotel?
On the defense now, as it
if he's not pushing aggressively right now, he's running the risk of getting hooked without really looking for a hook himself. What is the point of this positioning? Why not wait until there's at least pressure somewhere else on the map with DPS angles or Void's angle, or push with Void so this never happens. Just impatient and sloppy play, and that's going to lose them 30 seconds. Maybe not 30 seconds, like 15 seconds. Okay, maybe 30 seconds if Prophet just hits every head in the game. Yeah, now they've only got a minute left.
How does he get this level of
Lip is
consistency
on
across
the
all
Ashe
six
now.
heroes?
Ridiculous, isn't it?
And this peak on Hanzo of all heroes.
Yeah, Prophet is shredding.
It's quite jaw-dropping.
But again,
I mean, it's hard to have this kind of
as well as Prophet's playing, like he shouldn't be given that initial opportunity by Stand going down in the first place.
Right up there and right at home when it comes to these playoff scenarios. I was ready to put a nail in the
Why aren't they doing the same strat they did the first attack and really force Fitz out of position and he's creative out of position?
Now Shanghai have taken a nice right-hand side flank approach.
Okay. Why didn't they just do this from the opener? They have to know how important this ground is. Not necessarily just to deny, but to enable their own snipers.
Prophet is taking an angle underneath because they want to get a Dragon Strike.
All right, they're going fast. They're finally making some moves.
Buy space on the point, I think.
Now Void can touch.
Over towards the archway as the Shanghai Dragons
Marvel moving back to the high ground was smart by him, and they're going to pay for it.
Marvel lifts them up in the air and Prophet gets the kill, unleashes the
Dragging to deny res.
Everybody is trying to kill Gesture. It's so good.
5 seconds left.
It's ridiculous. The whole hog on top.
They waited so long to make the play they made in their first attack, and they made it worse. They did it more sloppily. They're either like really rattled by Soul's play, or they're just, for some reason, playing a lot less coordinated than they were against Shock. And I just don't understand why.
But it was the ring around the rosies and the high ground when Shanghai were chasing them out. Soul wrote that.
So yeah, Soul has 3 minutes to cap 1 tick. I think we know how this map ends.
Then he's almost locked it in. That's a long way away. They are 0-1 down in this series, but he's doing a good job of it here on King's Row.
Here it is, the Soul Dynasty on their attack, and they've got quite a bit of time to work with here. You can see Fitz just holding into the spawn for now. Doesn't want to take any aggressive anger.
And now we see Soul doing the same attack they did the first time around. Respecting the defenders, not walking into weird sightlines.
So it's a difficult ask for them. But one pick
Fitz
is
is
all
not on the high
Soul
ground
needs.
anymore. Yeah, Fitz is not on the high ground anymore. He's actually wrapping around.
So Gesture's got this position for free.
While Gesture plays underneath. This is slow, controlled gameplay from Soul. They're showcasing something different here. This isn't the scrappy, uncoordinated.
Gesture's on second point.
That you normally expect. I mean, sure, Gesture's going on a flank, but it's everyone else on his team is playing safe and passive to kind of allow him to go on this journey.
I wouldn't agree that this is a change in playstyle. Goodbye, Stan. They were just waiting for their opportunity. Now they're going to show the exact same scrappiness they were showing previously. DM killing Fitz is a nice turn though, but Gesture's still back here to sleep onto Stan. Okay, he's burned a lot of time and bought a lot of space for his team though. I'd like to make sure Fitz and Prophet are taking advantage of that. Prophet obviously being really aggressive. But still, these picks are going to be in a lot of space on their next attack. Fitz is like still in an aggressive position, still holding a good angle. Void still having good pressure on the point. Gesture's back now. The hook into Nano. Okay, the sleep. It's not a huge deal. That Dragon's denying a lot of vision more than anything from Lip, which is actually pretty huge. Whew! That was really nice from Soul. So just showing an example of the difference in respect. When Shanghai were attacking, Stan got hooked right here for no reason before his team was ready to do anything. Shanghai on their attack took almost a minute to finally go up to the high ground and start forcing space there, and Soul proactively retook that space with Void and sort of like followed in their footsteps. Contrast that with Soul's attack. They were always keeping tabs on stand 1. They were never walking into his hook range for any reason. They got a good sleep on him to deny his aggression at the same time that their Roadhog was going on a flank and finding his own aggression. On the first attack, he went up to the high ground with Void. not with Void, with what is their off tank's name? With their Sigma and took the high ground space on their own. But this time he ends up walking to second point and catching them off guard. Again, a really heads up play from Seoul. They're changing up their style without changing the amount of respect they're giving to Shanghai, and they're still going through the steps to make these plays work. Whereas from Dragons on their attack, what we saw in their overtime attack at least, we saw them like just waste a lot of time, number one. But then also they didn't really they didn't line up their timing between their front line and their DPS, and they didn't really respect the amount of reach that Gesture had on the defense. And of course, Prophet just absolutely dominating. Definitely helps. So now we're 1-1. And it is Shanghai's pick, and we're going to Volskaya. They've looked very comfortable on Volskaya before. They're attacking first with double sniper.
But he is one of those players that I would trust playing Pharah.
Yeah, they're just going all in with the Ana. I'm guessing it's based on Gesture's playstyle.
You'll often never see him in an open side.
So now with, yeah, okay, DM going on this flank makes a lot of sense because Prophet is going to be untouchable unless they take a good angle. I mentioned this on the last map as well, or sorry, the last match. But if you're playing Mercy right here, I don't see, like, you're always going to be like fluttering up and down, pocketing your Ashe. I don't see why you don't just take time to make sure people aren't coming out these angles, or even this angle for your Pharah. You have to know that this is a possibility for the Widowmaker. And if Widow gets a shot off unscouted, that's like just an unnecessary danger for your team. Like we're about to see.
He's got a complete sightline instead. He decides to take the shot.
He misses.
Onto Toby instead. He misses. Going for the 1v1 now. Look at this. Straight away into the back line. He wins it out, and it wasn't even the 1v1.
That's outrageous that he gets that kill. Number one. First of all, should have been better scouting, but Fitz. Come on, man. Fitz. Just the fact that it took that long to finish that kill, I think, was like the biggest showing for Seoul for how poorly that was executed. The fact that he wasted his dynamite, he didn't hit the dynamite when he threw it at the Widow. Like, boosted dynamite would be enough to just like kill him, or just like walk up and hit a body shot on him. But yeah, Seoul cleans it up, but still, that was pretty messy from Fitz. And again, would have liked to see better scouting on that choke, on that flank. No reason to commit everything to the choke and just ignore it.
And they know again that DM is going to try and go for this flanky kind of play.
Alright, they've given up the choke now. Now Gesture's... I'd like to see Gesture looking for some sort of aggressive move. Instead, he's giving himself no space to work with, opting to move back to his backline. The Nano comes through as appealing ultimate for Marvel. Gesture gets a hook, but at that point it's too late. It's too little too late. And yeah, I don't understand how Gesture spent this whole fight starting on this side of the map, walking all the way back here. Like, at the very least, you could stay here and look for like a hook as they're crossing in, or try to bait them to aggress onto you so that your team has space to move out. But the fact that he moved all the way back into his team and then hooked someone into his team over here, I think that was really poor play from Gesture. And I think, like, the casters have been talking a lot about Gesture's really flanky, aggressive playstyle, but this just looked dumb.
That is far too much damage to try and overcome.
I'm not sure what he was trying to do. There's no one he realistically needs to peel for. Marvel as Sigma should be more than enough to peel for their backline. And the way you're going to turn that fight is by Gesture finding an aggressive moment of his own. Or Fitz finding an aggressive moment, or Prophet finding an aggressive moment. But for Gesture just to give up all that space and do nothing with it looked really bad to me. And of course, Shanghai, all they had to do was just push W, and they took the space. There was no split threats for them to worry about, and they just took the space and worked with it. Wow. Nice little movement from Void to avoid that flux. DM finds a nice pick to open this up. Gesture's on the flank, but he looks like he's about to get punished. Yep. Again, the difference, and this is not peak Seoul. I think Seoul can show Lee J. Gun.
a little bit there towards the
I understand
tail
that play
end. Maybe an
a little bit. I'll talk
opportunity
about it in a
here, but
second.
Looks like Stand One wants to try and put an end to this one. Profit moving over to the Tracer to try and stall this one out. Try and get a pick in the backline perhaps. And
So,
he does, as Izzy
something I
actually
mentioned last time we watched
finds a
Volskaya
second
in the
one
shock
onto
match
DM. Profit.
was that.
It was matter for
Here,
the
let's go
Shank,
back
but he gets
to right before that.
this, comes out as well,
So,
but the-
these picks are really good at opening this fight,
comes out with his grip.
but even with this big of an advantage, it's still very winnable for Seoul in the way that they've got spawns coming back, and it's going to come down to the positioning they're able to maintain. So Lee Jae-gon goes aggressive here because he wants to obviously kill this Ana, and honestly, if he kills this Ana and denies any amount of healing from coming back into this fight, and then gets good positioning himself, it's a pretty good spot to be in. I think once he failed to get the kill and saw Creative get the health pack, seeing how very little Valky has left, you cannot repeat that. Oops. That was a bit aggressive. But I understand what he was trying to go. He was trying to close this fight.
Given maybe an opportunity here, but it looks like Stand One wants to try and put an end to this one. Profit moving over to the Tracer to
But he
try and
missed his
stall this
opportunity
one
to do
out.
so.
Try and get a pick in the backline perhaps, and indeed he does, as Izzyaki will fall, finds a second one.
And yeah,
onto
now
DM.
Profit's back on Tracer.
Profit. It wasn't the intended choice, but he's made it work nevertheless.
They're still committing, though.
Actually, and Bob now going to be stalling out this point, just keeping a bit of pressure.
Nice healing under Marvel. Oh, never mind. I thought they were going to keep him up. I'm not sure why they committed Bob there, honestly. Gesture, both tanks being alive.
In his mech. Soul Dynasty.
Yeah.
It looks like they have finally
They didn't even force any
stalled
ults
Shanghai
out.
Dragons long enough. They've gotten enough picks.
I mean, they forced some
It's gonna be
swaps,
them
which I guess
holding
counts as
on
ults.
for now. Be switching back off of these stalling heroes.
So many amazing things happened in that long extended team fight. DM getting opening kills, Stand One just going on a tear, Lee Jae-gon killing Toby and then trying to kill Creative with his Valkyrie. I mean, just absolute madness. 3 minutes left though here, Brent. They're going to come forwards with a whole hog. I'm not sure there's that much they can really do with it, and Profit is still on that Tracer. He is going to be so clutch. Flashbacks to 2018 once again. It was
huge
Volskaya in the grand
bionade,
finals.
Huge bionade there. Connects on
Very
the two
overcommitment
targets
on the front line there from
Creative.
Void.
The tanks are going to be
I
going
believe he got
down.
hooked in, but still, I don't think he should be.
Instant res comes out as
He should
Lee
be even
Jae-gon's
trying
gonna
for
be
positions
mitigating.
that put him in hook range. He should be
DM,
instead
the Widowmaker
looking to
just
force
hoping for a kill here. Lip as well.
awkward angles onto DPS or enabling Stand One to take an off angle.
The recall forced out. They cannot afford to just give up any space.
I don't think there's much value in actually forcing this front line. Ooh, Gesture trades out. Looks like this is going to be a cap for Shanghai, though.
Shanghai Dragons able to now roll across the point.
Again, nice peeling from Seoul, but I don't think it's going to be enough for just one tick left. Yeah, that's going to be too much.
Lip with 3 kills. And a nice end and close.
But
absolute chaos.
all said and done,
Absolute
really nice
pandemonium,
defense for Seoul.
but Shanghai
Only
get
2
the
minutes
job
left
done.
after such a decisive
Again, it's DM and
opening
Lip,
fight
man. They're
on their
so
second point.
clutch to watch.
Is not
And it's
not
fantastic,
bad.
the picks that they're able to find. DM
And they did a really good job on
beginning,
first point
Lip
for a
closes things
while,
out. It's such an amazing 1-2
answering that
punch
initial
the
flank
Shanghai Dragons
from
have got with this double sniper look. It's just phenomenal. And as
from the
clutch
Widow
as
player
Profit
from
is,
I
as
keep wanting to say
amazing as
Ons,
he
but I
is
know we're
during
not
the
watching
playoffs,
Shock anymore.
even he wasn't able to
Oh
rescue
my
that.
god,
They now get
from
down to 1 minute and 55 on the time bank, but that's still
DM, of course,
On the merge, well, to cancel out these high impact
denying that
ultimates.
flank as well
Such a
as. I mean, if Gesture just did anything during that whole time, they might have had a better chance of holding first.
A lot of flashbacks
But
to
just a lot of
2018
wasted
players
time in
as well,
general.
where Obviously, Profit, Gesture, and Badosin were able to come away with the victory. So the Seoul Dynasty, it's almost no wonder that they're able to perform at such an incredible level here again in 2020.
Again, nothing but hog on offense for these teams.
It's gone for the jump shot, unable to find it. It's a hard shot on the enemy hands though. There's a lot to try and block your line of sight. See DM now taking the shot straight
Dirty.
away. It was on the high
And I think
ground.
he's just far enough forward that
Yeah,
that can't be rezzed.
because it happened on the high ground and there's no real way unless Lee Jae-gon wants to risk it. He can't risk
Gesture's
it. Over the
moving in.
sideline, so
See,
Axel will
again,
come
like this
through.
this flank pressure from Gesture is valuable, but if it's scouted, ooh, nice sleep on the stand. But yeah, it's scouted out. What's he gonna do?
His breather and health
No
packs to
more
be able to
breather
work
now. He's stuck. He's cornered.
Yeah.
He's trying to get
If
away
he's
with
scouted
it.
out and appropriately reacted to. Like, you don't want to send everyone to go deal with him. You don't want to overreact because that just opens up the rest of the map for his team. And that's part of what Jester's trying to do, is just open the map for his team by taking attention. But he's very easy to mark, very easy to play around. If you want to just ignore him too, you can just take another part of the map, since this map is so wide. It's not hard to play against this style of Hog when you know the map and when you have very intentional positioning.
Some semblance of an idea of what they were going for.
Fitz is going to do the flank?
Yeah, Fitz is gonna be going for this.
Thought he almost hit the ice. Oh, but they've got walls. They know he's there.
He has eyes on. He
Tragic.
knows this is occurring currently. The flank that's working his way around. Izayaki goes for the sleep, connects.
Oh, okay. I thought for a second the nade missed for whatever reason.
From Shanghai Dragons.
DM.
Walls. A lot of opportunities for him to take so many shots now. They're going so deep in through this.
They're committing lots of ults here.
In the history of professional Overwatch.
By Fitz, I don't think you needed both Dragon and Sig ult, but I'm wrong. Soul just... Okay, hold on. How did Soul get... So going into this fight,
From Shanghai Dragons.
what is it exactly? It's DM and Lip and Void
A lot of opportunities for him to take so many shots
versus Fitz, Prophet,
now. They're going so
and Izaki and Lee Jae-gong. So it's a 3v4, or... Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a team fight occur here in the history
I really think they just needed to slow things down. And now Marvel's joining.
And it looks very, very even currently.
I feel like if they just played their shield, I don't think Marvel was there right away. Gesture obviously wasn't there. He just got back on ball.
Not a leg or a hero to stand
But I don't know. I feel like if they just slowed things down, they would have had that really easily with Void's shield and then just DM and Lip taking free shots.
A little too far.
Maybe take a wider angle. This fight made my head hurt. Soul went down. Went in down too. Yeah. I really don't understand why both Lip and Void committed ults and then pushed through the choke as if they were just going to instantly win.
All 12 players scrapping in, like you said, Brent, a very uncommon area of the map. And the Seoul Dynasty come away with the victory because they were the proactive ones in the engagement. They now have so
I actually
many
think
to work with.
the reason Seoul won that is just because Shanghai overextended through a choke point. They didn't have their supports readily available on them, and then Lee Jae-gong ended up dying because he was split from his team trying to follow up through a choke.
Lip with the kill there onto Prophet. Prophetic Flux. The Bionade from Izayaki just to negate a bit of the
Nice
damage
trade onto
going through.
Prophet.
Still,
The
it
res
will
comes
not
through.
matter for
Marvel
Seoul
should
Dynasty. He's gonna
die.
get the res off onto Prophet.
Oh!
Just kind of
The
reverse
counter
that.
grapple.
Just still creating magic on the point as well.
But yeah,
So
Soul just looks so split right now, it's going to be hard to follow up any of these picks.
chaos.
Void's just like taking taking Marvel for a stroll off the point. Felt like a plat play where they get overconfident and clean up. Yeah, I think they knew it wasn't quite a cleanup play, but I think they made a miscall in overcommitting so fast. I think they knew they were at technically a numbers disadvantage, but they had backup coming, that they wanted to close the fight really fast before anyone else from Seoul could rejoin them. That's why they committed 2 ults. Both of the ults, by the way, just didn't get any kills, unfortunately, and during both of those ults, Toby got a res off. So it was just really disconnected aggression, and they didn't focus down what they needed to be focusing on, which was just, before anything else, keeping their own lives intact and coordinating their aggression with the resources they did have. In that case, they should have been using Sigma's shield a lot more effectively.
These previous team fights have been made so scrappy, so back and forth. It's been hard to see who's getting an early lead. Still, the kill into Marvel will get resurrected. So back in the fight, Seoul Dynasty have 6, and they are just looking for these pickoffs to try and burn this resurrect.
The key to...
So Seoul looking a lot more coordinated in their play, trying to use their tank bodies and resources to escort their DPS in, but there's just so much damage coming in from Shanghai to deny these rotations.
But Jester's knocked stand 1 off the map.
He's knocked him off the map with the whole hog, Josh. And he's found an opening again, and they've taken space, but DM...
Yeah, it's not going to matter. Even if you got like 3 kills and you trade only 1, it's just not enough as the attackers. You need to win so convincingly on 2CP.
Well. Gesture is actually just taking complete control, gets the hook off, knocks him onto the low ground, but chasing him straight in.
Stan doesn't care. He's taking that much aggression on purpose so that his DPS has space to work with.
And it is all over the place. Void with 2
the fact that like they're committing and dropping onto Stan in those situations just shows to me that Seoul doesn't really fully understand how important marking the other people are. They had 3 people killing Stand, and in the meantime, DM and Lip were just taking the whole map and killing everyone.
It doesn't matter who it is.
They're focusing too much on the Hog in these matchups. Maybe it's because they put so much pressure, so much focus on their own Hog taking space and finding value, that they feel like anytime they catch an enemy Hog out of position, they need to get the kill. But realistically, the amount of time it takes to kill Stand in those situations is just too long to warrant committing that many resources to it. Better just to use the space that he gave up rather than chase him out of it.
He's gonna get an ugly surprise.
DM
has the infra side, he has the information, the vision, potentially get a kill. Dragon Strike comes through now.
Where's that Dragon Strike going?
Soul Dynasty hoping to try and turn it around properly.
No.
The Storm Arrows does collect one, but a Resurrect onto Lip instantly brings him back into the fight. And now
they need to be playing more for their DPS instead of just for Gesture, because Gesture is just not doing anything important until the fights are like already over.
Gonna be soaking it up now as he's healed back up to
Soul look like they're too linear in their approaches, and this is something I actually commended them for on King's Row, where they had very planned approaches, but it seems like their plans are very limited, and they're not able to adjust into these team fights where they're not able to take the space with their tanks, so they need to come up with something new, and that usually will look like setting up their DPS in a safe position, like up here, so that they can pressure this area and then take this area with their tanks, and then from there, take the high grounds, take the whole map, wrap around the point on the high grounds, and then your DPS can move up from here. But you need to play relatively safe from this position, because during this whole time, DM and Lip are going to be looking to retake space on their own. But the fact that they're just all-inning on this choke, or all-inning from this position and just running down main, means they're really limiting their pressure on the map, and it's just a free firing range for DM and Lip.
Dragon Strike into the accretion from Void, locks Marvel into place and takes him out.
From what I've seen from their POVs, they've had no pressure on them this entire attack. On second point. First point was a different story, but on second point they just had no pressure on them, and it seems like Soul really don't know how to attack this point. If I'm shocked, I'm taking notes from this VOD, for sure.
Are able to take Volskaya Industries. It was their map pick, they were the favorites on it. They're going to be leading this series now 2-1.
So yeah, very decisive map from Shanghai. First point was a little weird, but very good showing from Shanghai. Alright. So this is the first time we've seen Dorado in a while, same as Watchpoint from the last one. Curious we're not seeing any ball play or any Winston play. I wasn't really hardcore expecting it or anything, but this map in general, notably because of these high grounds, very favorable for dive tanks and their ability to ping pong on and off the point and do stuff like that. But when you're playing double sniper anyway, you don't really need a ton of stalling pressure. You want to just focus on your heavy fight zones, which on first point Dorado are going to be this corner sometimes, but typically this big old choke. So Soul just looking for some early picks here, some early pressure, and probably going to give up a decent amount of space. Cute.
Make sure he wasn't headshot at the beginning.
And this is it. Again, we're looking at these double sniper compositions. It all comes down to...
Curious to see how Dragons are going to attack this space, because again, very dynamic, but still linear space. There's a lot of high grounds, a lot of potential flankers you can take, but in general, so much of your pressure is going to be just facing one direction, similar to Watchpoint Gibraltar. And what we saw from Watchpoint Gibraltar from the last series is that it's very hard to dislodge people, dislodge these tanks especially, from contesting this very important space. So how are Shanghai going to get around this corner? That's the question right now.
Yeah, this composition ends up being
I'm surprised that Venomine didn't pop. He was basically standing on it. So this is one way you do it. You get flank pressure. You get someone, either your Widow or your Hanzo in this case, to take this bridge area and pressure from an area that forces the defenders to look not only in one direction, but worry about this other threat. And if they don't deal with this threat fast enough, then Lip has the potential to pop off, get a few kills, or if they spend too much time dealing with this threat, then it opens up a lot of space for the attackers on the other end. This ends up being a real interesting flank. All right, let's see it. I don't remember this one live. So, good response from Soul to pressure forward, knowing that Lip is not going to be there. Knowing they don't have one of their heavy DPS dealers in the close range especially, to just use the tank pressure to overwhelm these people in the front line who are trying to obviously take pressure off of Lip, while Lip's trying to take pressure off of them. All they have to do is commit into one side, and they take that duel very favorably.
Yeah, they just push in with the front line.
Oh, they're going to second point now.
So they just take the front line fight instead.
Woo! Lip gets the kill, but it's too late at this point. His team got wiped.
But Josh, you're completely right.
He can try and spawn camp Fitz, which is something, but him being out of the fight for this long, again, doesn't bode well for the rest of his team because he's not fighting for ground that's important. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. So if he commits to spawn camping Widow, he's basically just forfeited this fight for his team because, one, his Widow's not going to take the same flank and just completely deny any value from this angle. And he's not going to be able to support his team if Soul decides to go aggressive here. Even though it's a 5v5, this definitely favors Soul for two reasons. One, defensive advantage. They have the setup, they can take the timing that they want. But two, because they've got Hanzo instead of Widow in this battle. And this sight line, this close range, definitely favors the Hanzo. There's going to just be way more damage coming through, way more damage on tanks coming through. And unless they push out all the way around this corner into Shanghai's Widow sightlines, there's no risk of Widow really hitting your backline because there's going to be too much front-facing pressure.
By taking out Li Jae-gon.
Would Shanghai be wise to just wait and see if Lip gets the spawn camp and then wait for him to get back on the flank and push with him? It's kind of hard to say. I think what they should do, ideally what they would do is mark this Widow while still trying to pressure forward. So he has intel on the Widow and he plays around it by knowing where she's coming from spawn, by having Sonic up and stuff like that. But still his main pressure is going to be facing into Soul's main force. And this is what you kind of see in... the reason I think like this is because of my thoughts on Pharah duels, interestingly enough. So the way Pharah duels, say Pharah versus Pharah, if both Pharahs are focusing each other, then there's no pressure on either team, right? If one Pharah is focusing the enemy team, while the other Pharah... Here, let me... So if Pharahs are focusing each other, no pressure on teams. If both Pharahs are focusing the enemy team, there's no pressure on the enemy Pharah. If one Pharah is focusing the enemy team, while the other Pharah is focusing you, you are getting infinitely more value as long as you stay alive. So as long as you are aware of the enemy Pharah's intentions, and they're not like all-inning you and getting within melee range of your face, you are getting so much more value by just wasting the Pharah's time and getting value onto the enemy team at the same time. So I would look at this in a similar light. Hanzo versus Widow, yes, they can duel each other, but ultimately it's not going to affect the team v team fight. And like I said, the team v team fight should favor Soul in this situation. Yes, he can ignore the Widow and look to focus his team, but then you risk, again, getting focused by the Widow, getting one shot himself by staying too predictable location and trying to get shots off. Or he risks the Widow coming back and forcing a 6v6 in the same way, or forcing his position out of the way and forcing a 6v6 in that kind of way. But if he takes the time to mark the enemy Widow, get the information on their location, scare them off of easy angles and stuff like that, while still taking the time to put a lot of focus into the enemy team, his value just like skyrockets. And this is obviously a lot harder to do than in a Pharah duel. It's a lot harder to dodge Widow shots than it is to dodge Pharah's rockets. But if he can like manage his uptime properly, I think this would be the ideal play for Lip in this situation. Whether or not he can successfully do that, based on the map geometry, based on the Widow versus Hanzo duel, based on the information he gets from Widow coming out of spawn, if Widow comes like a completely unexpected way, is all up in the air. But I think that's what his mind should be leaning towards, rather than just, I have to 1v1 the Widow, or I have to ignore the Widow. I think he can find a middle ground.
And the front line of the Seoul Dynasty are just able to dominate because they have the player advantage. Very smart from them, but that advantage is not going to be much.
DM finds a pick onto Prophet, which is going to open things up, it looks like. Oh, psych, never mind. So hard to break through this. Again, without any kind of split pressure, even with that pick, so much space for Soul to work with to kite through. And if Shanghai try to keep up with that aggression to chase them down, there's so many resources they're burning, that's so much uptime they're burning, and they're not even working with an advantage anymore. because of the res came through. I should put this on YouTube? Yeah, I probably will after. The difficulty of the execution intimidates me on that. Yeah, but I think at the highest level, you need to bank on those kind of plays and go for them as often as possible.
Flux just to try
And I think you need to depend on,
put an end to the push.
like, unless there's something telling the player otherwise that he needs to take this duel, I think he's just wasting his time.
This is another fight
Still
that's happening.
happening.
I don't think taking the
Still
Widow
happening in the
out of this
backline.
fight is
Lip
worth
just
taking his own
keeping
self out
things
of it.
out. A strange trade, though, because Lip is the majority of your damage in the middle of these fights.
Ooh! The other alternative is, like, if you have supreme confidence like Lip does, is take that long-range duel as Hanzo to the point where once you get the kill, you can rejoin the fight. But again, if you're asking your team to just wait until that happens, you're wasting so much time. So you need to, like, hope by the time you win this duel as Lip that your team hasn't lost this fight, which in this case didn't happen. But that was a nut shot.
Oh my.
And now Lip is going to be able to pincer the rest of Soul.
Yep. A dangerous position for Soul, but they turn it around with the kill onto DM, and now look at this Prophet tries to take the fight to him. The Storm Arrow's not enough. Dragon Strike.
I mean, Lip's on a tear right now, but it's not enough for him to be winning these duels and finding his own advantages if his team's paying the price.
Just to try and soak up this damage, and he is a big threat. When he gets the Breather off as well, it's not much that can bring him down. And it creates enough space for Toby to get the Resurrect off onto Marvel.
And yeah,
from Gesture just to turn it around.
The amount of resources Shanghai's using, like in terms of ult economy, in terms of focus, in terms of positioning, the way they're pushing just linearly straight through this choke, means that Soul just needs to not lose outright, and then they can regroup and then reconvene with better positioning. At the very least, better positioning, and then usually a resource advantage and an ultimate advantage. Because they're not forced to ult just to hold the ground, they can give up the ground and then ult their way back in, and force ults out of Soul for them to take that space in the first place.
Opening pickoffs from DM where he's going for these jump shots, but the Soul Dynasty just seem to have this entire section of Dorado on lock. This seems like it is their comfort zone.
Yeah,
See why they pick
very clearly practice map for Soul. Even dealing with Lip's shenanigans, they've held their cool, they've managed space really effectively. Oh, the sleep, that was nuts.
It cancels out the gravitic flux.
I mean, it also doesn't help that every play that Shanghai's going for seems to be matched by some sort of counter-aggression from Soul. So they're managing their resources really well. They're also, like, landing insane shots like these sleeps, like the picks we're seeing come through.
A brutal performance, but a necessary one.
15 seconds, it's not looking good. Nano vaping hog. It's a lot of healing. It'd be cool if Nano also increased her healing output, so you could, like, Nano a Lucio, and then he amps, like, 500 healing per second or something stupid. I mean, at that point, they were forced into a linear approach, but... So, like, other ways you can approach this map, and ways we've seen in the past, obviously, are either run a comp that is better at bursting through chokes, some sort of rush with, like, Lucio speed, something like Sombra to hack a target that you can rush down, something like a Reaper or a Mei to really guarantee the close range win, and just focus on bursting through that choke, and then using stuff like spawn advantage, and your ability to always find the initial win, even if you don't win the overall team fight, to slow roll your way through Dorado first. That's one way of doing it. There's the split threat that we talked about. That's something common with Double Sniper, but also something common with Pharah play, where Pharah will play like above the right roofs and constantly be attacking. And again, dealing with threats that Pharah needs to focus on, but her main priority should be on getting an advantage within the team fight so that the rest of their team has an advantage pushing through. But other than that, forcing yourself through this choke point over and over, and that prediction. Void just had no idea where Ana was, so he couldn't have a chance dodging that, but that was a really nice prediction from Creative there. So that really just came to Soul not making any mistakes, dealing with all of Shanghai's aggression windows very, very well, and just looking extremely clean on defense. It's not like Shanghai misplayed that. Like, the whole thing with Lip is probably subjective. I don't know what happened there. A little bit subjective about what he should have done in that moment, but I don't think like he was like a hindrance to his team, and there were I just can't talk anymore, Jesus. A lot of good opportunities for him to actually turn that into an advantage, but Soul was fast enough on pulling the trigger to force the forward engage before he was able to.
Resurrect is going to get burned just to offset that. It's a standard play. We've seen it so many times. You're going to be seeing it a little bit more before the playoffs is truly over. Soldier's hunting for one more opportunity here. Might be going for a bit of a left-hand side flank, try and take control of the high ground and the staircase.
There are just so many ways that the Soul Dynasty win.
Soul
There's
playing a
couple
lot
of
more
picks coming out
patiently
from
here.
Prophet
They're
Fizz.
not going
A
for
hook
crazy
comes out from
flanks.
Gesture in an unresable position.
Not sure what their win condition
Forces
is.
the pressure on Shanghai.
So, you don't need to make any plays if the plays are going to come to you. I don't know what the plan... Okay, so I understand in theory what they were trying to do. It's somewhat similar to what Stryker did on Hollywood defense for Shock, where they're baiting them to try and take space around this important choke point. They want them to set up their own plays, and then you catch them off guard with an aggressive play of your own. And you can do that with Hanzo, you can do that with an aggressive Widow angle, you can do that with a Hog flank. But this amount of commitment, like, there's no way Lip gets out of this. If he doesn't get the instant kill on Prophet, there's no way he gets out. Not only that, but he doesn't know... Well, I just thought I was in the replay client and I could fly around the map. He doesn't know that Hog is, like, on this high ground and could easily just turn and kill him, even if he does get the kill. This was such an unnecessary risk. I really don't understand. Like, I get it's a scary thing that all they have to do is push up to here, but that doesn't mean you just throw away your life like this in, like, for, like, let's call it a 50-50 shot at getting that skill.
Shanghai have to go for those kind of plays because
I don't agree. They do not have to go for those kind of plays.
Stanwon and DM have actually made this a winnable fight as well, despite the fact that they lost Lip and Ligia gone. These guys are coming back on the Tracer and the Lucio, desperately trying to clutch.
Yeah, now they're at a comp disadvantage. They're going to win this team fight, looks like, but they're not going to be able to hold the space for long, especially with people coming back from spawn. Like I said, the spawn advantage is very real here. It's not quite a 2CP map or anything like that, but... Oof.
Still doing a good job of holding on. Gesture though with the nano boost. Grass comes through, Gravitic plugs into one. Marvel needs
win condition is Shanghai feeds. Apparently, you don't need a win condition if the enemy team wins it for you. Void's doing some work right now though, looking to stabilize, but it's too little. And again, the comp disadvantage. All Soul has to do is just not die, and then they'll slowly just roll over these people with more damage and more health. Yeah, that was... I mean, I understand the game plan behind Lip's play there, and he probably thought Soul was going to be acting a lot faster, so that his timing would have made more sense. But God, that looked so bad. That looked really, really bad.
This is fantastic.
Shanghai Dragons.
Okay, map 5, Oasis.
2-2. These teams have been
So Prophet is actually pulling out the Pharah.
Our final two Asian teams as well, battling it out.
I'm guessing he'll do the same on Garden as well, if we get there.
Finals, presented by IBM.
So I like the Sombra into Pharah matchup for these teams.
Sombra and Prophet on the Pharah as well. Prophet is going to be exposed to
I like the Ball Sigma over the Ball Hog on this kind of map.
Prophet looking for these angles right now. He forces to relocate out, but not before Gesture goes down. That was Lip.
Much easier to find advantages with Sombra than it is to guarantee damage with Pharah in most situations, unless you have like full control of the map and you can completely stuff or mark Sombra.
Prophet so accurate with these rockets. Void is going to be going.
Let me go back there. How does Void get this isolated? Okay, he get boops in. Okay, I missed that. I was like, why was Void on point that far up? I don't think he should have even left like that sort of doorway, like this doorway into traffic even. Again, you need to focus on winning the fight before taking the point, especially against a Pharah. You need to be very careful about what space you're walking into.
Beautiful stuff.
Ooh, this is a bit risky from Lip. Trade's going back and forth, but Soul have control of the point. This is really good for Soul. The hack comes out for Marvel, but he's just chilling. And it doesn't even kill him. What was that EMP? I don't know what's going on with Lip, man, but he's not having a good match.
They just pocket him. They pocket him and clean up the team fight. I think you've got to
these decisions, like whether or not that Hanzo flank was Lip's decision, whether or not that EMP was Lip's decision, it's showing on his hero. It's showing on his role that this either misread of the situation, miscommunication of the situation, or just over-aggressive playstyle is not working for them. They need to chill out. And I get, like, it's got to be like adrenaline's high right now. Obviously, Game 5, this is your chance to go to the Grand Finals.
Theoretically hard counter it because Prophet is that good at using his movement, and now he's rolling forward, moving in.
Wow, the nano onto Fitz looks like kept him alive from a hard dive. And the Prophet barrage.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, losing that first fight was really bad against this composition, especially given the fact that they got the initial hack in the pick onto Gesture, wasn't it too? They got Gesture first kill, and they weren't able to convert that because Void got focused down. Yeah, I mean, even without that barrage, they were completely stuffed. Like, even if Prophet just went over and shot 2 rockets, they probably would have died. They were completely stuffed.
Ridiculous performance so far. Prophet has almost been untouched.
Yeah, Prophet and Fitz both completely untouched because there's so much pressure coming in from Gesture and Marvel, both.
Looks like Shanghai Dragons already have positioning here.
Shanghai's coming in a little bit.
That was a hack up onto Marvel as well. He wasn't able to roll out of there. Still the hook. D-Mech comes through.
Oh no, he had to walk through the mines. Fitz is still up. No, this is looking like a flip. Prophet's probably going to swap off to Tracer now. And that's going to make things even harder for Shanghai. Because Lip's going to have a much harder time getting in versus a Tracer. Is he keeping Pharah? Hanzo, okay. And Marvel's on Sigma now. So they're playing a slower game. They're playing a countery dive sort of game. And I like that style. I think they could have gotten away for sure with a Tracer or a Sombra of their own and kept the ball, but versus Lip Sombra, they probably don't want to risk that, and that's understandable. Okay, are they going to all in here? It's only Stand 1 that can really follow up an EMP here. Okay. Can they even follow that up? Again, these EMP and Prophet gets the first kill. These overcommitments from Lip. I don't. So the reason. Let me go back to that overhead view. We had one good angle. Where to go? So the reason this is such a bad EMP. So EMP'd here, hit everyone in the circle. His team comp right now, the only mobile member, I guess Lee Jae-gong counts, but the only other mobile member besides him that could realistically follow this up is the Hammond, is the Wrecking Ball, is Stand 1, right? The only one who can go from a safe position, I'm assuming DM was somewhere up here, Izayaki maybe doing the same. If not, they're probably like across the map on the traffic side, shooting into this hallway, but in no way can they go through this hallway or around this corner. It's just impossible for them. And Lip's main target was Marvel. If it was someone like a Zen or even Honor or Mercy, he could be enough, at least him and Stan could be enough to burn down these supports if they were alone. But they weren't alone. Marvel was their main target there. Let's look back at the CMP. So it hits all 3 of these people, but Fitz is in a position to punish. Void is in a sort of position to follow up. At best, he gives a shield, but this is not enough damage. You don't have either of your DPS. You don't have the healing. Or, sorry, you don't have your other DPS, not either. You have Lip there, obviously. But there's obviously not enough damage to kill Marvel here. He has both healers on him, and you can't focus the healers because you have to walk through them, and you'd have to walk through Fitz. This was such a poor decision.
He goes down. That was Prophet, I believe, flanking on the left-hand side. Takes him out, but Gesture turns it, and Nano boost applied as well. He's a force of nature just rolling through the opposition.
I have to believe that this is just Shanghai after a long day of games.
They're going to be able to flip this point over. The overtime will start burning.
Because they have not looked like this at all throughout this entire playoffs run, from what I've seen. So that's going to be round 1.
Round 1, going to the Seoul Dynasty.
Again, I hate to call out Lip so much, but I just don't see any excuses. Look. This is the thing about Roadhog main tank. Like, this is a prime example of why Roadhog's so strong on this patch. Because, like, not only does he do the main tank's job of being the front line of defense, of being the first target you see, he is such a threat that Gesture just got 2 kills while being fully focused after burning his survivability cooldown. Like, if this was Orisa or a Reinhardt, neither of those people would have died, realistically. Because one, they wouldn't be in Reinhardt's swing range. It's very easy to stand around it.
Up on the EMP. That's all they want in their little line.
And like the disruption Reinhardt would have faced during this whole time would have been like huge. Orisa the same thing, like even if she pops Fortify, she does not do enough damage. Maybe gets 1 kill if she's lucky. Same with Reinhardt, but like, how do you play around that? How do you play around a main tank that just kills 2 of your backline?
Need to deliver now. Last chance saloon for the Shanghai Dragons.
You can feel the pressure.
I'm really surprised at this positioning from Shanghai.
These teams, you can tell Shanghai Dragons, one slip up.
They look scared.
That's gonna be their
They're scared to Oh no. Lip again. So why in this rollout does no one go high ground? Look at this. Once you see Soul, once you see Hog here, immediately go high ground. I don't understand why not. You're not fighting for this space. You're fighting for eventually the point, and the best view you can enable for double hit scan especially will be off this high ground. You want to enable wide flanks for DM if you can, but your main priority should be setting up Lip and Izayaki on this high ground, on these 2 little windows. I'm surprised Seoul aren't doing the same thing, but it makes a little more sense with how they play Gesture and with Prophet on Hanzo. They have a lot of front-facing damage. If Shanghai mirrored this, they would absolutely demolish them. But because Shanghai, instead of doing anything during this time, they're just kind of hanging out. Okay, never mind. They are pushing up high ground, but it's not. It's so split. They got members all over here. They have Stand and DM pushing this high ground, which is good. But I would definitely like to see Void shield off main while Izayaki and Lip do the same, and then make this their base of operations instead of this, because this high ground just gives them so many more opportunities to get pressure onto the point, retake on either side based on where Gesture and Marvel are going. But instead, they're limiting themselves here. They're not shielding an important cooldown like a hook, and they just seem indecisive in their movement. Look how split up everyone is. And again, they're trying to take too much when they aren't given anything. And now Gesture's just walking through them. Where's Void to block Gesture's hook? What was Void doing in the mini room there? Who was he marking?
It's going to be another early capture for Soul. Just accruing up the percentages now.
Soul just looking much more coordinated in general, but also just have way better game plans when it comes to going aggressive. These first fight COTS are showing how well they can play aggressively, but also they're handling like this sort of stagnation from Shanghai super well. They're not overextending when they don't need to, but they're putting themselves in like this ready state where they're always ready to go in once they find that advantage. Similar to how Shock plays, honestly. But I think even like more aggressive from Soul. Nice Dragon Strike. Nano and Dragon Strike. Kind of an unwinnable one for Shanghai. But again, I'd like to see them putting pressure closer to the high ground instead of walking into this hog. Oh no. He just strolls on by.
And whilst that was going on, Lee Jae-gong took the fight straight to Toby. Took him out. A big pickoff. It means that Seoul Dynasty have to back off and play a little bit more defensive.
Yeah, they can't afford to play those forward positions because the res just simply isn't there. But it's not going to make that much difference. Shanghai have still got to execute onto the point here. Bob to engage, and here we go, Shanghai. This is
Alright, Bob is one way to get some split pressure. Lip finds a nice opening kill onto Fitz. Gesture answers back though. Again, why are they even in range of Gesture right now? What's the point? Force them to come out of the woodwork. Force them out of these choke points. Don't force yourself through them.
Does get the kill onto creative. The grass just eats up the damage, but is it
Stand 1 and Void should be focused on enabling DM and Lip, not on marking Gesture.
Toby trying to avenge his sniper ally,
because the way they're going to handle Gestures are... Oh no. Another one through the trance and everything. This is going to be the map. They don't have trance to retake. Oh no. Gesture's finding this much value because they're just walking into his range. And I get this isn't like a wide map that you can just easily avoid hog, but there's no reason to just... So tragic, honestly. Good for Seoul. Obviously, they absolutely were the better team this match. Shanghai was making a ton of mistakes. I'm not sure if they were just individually based or communication based or just macro decision making based, but that was Pepe hands. There's so many times that they're just like, Gesture doesn't even need to do anything, and they're giving them attention for free. They're walking into this point, they're retaking this point, and instead of thinking of the ways they're going to deal with Gesture and set up their own win condition, they're just thinking, okay, we got to force Gesture out. If we don't force Gesture out, we're going to lose. And they're forcing themselves into this mindset where they're opening themselves up to other threats, and then Gesture's not dying anyway because it's a Roadhog, and they have point control, and they're just running it down. Like, obviously, it's more complicated than just running it down, but they're putting so much attention into Gesture that just was not warranted. Not taking high ground when it was being given to them was weird to me. Yeah, play off your own hog space. Don't force yourself into the range of the enemy Roadhog. That's how Seoul was playing. Seoul had their base of operations where they wanted to set up a Roadhog to find as much pressure as possible, and they played around that, but they weren't also running into stand 1 at the same time. I don't know. Rough loss for Dragons. Like, the reason I want to say this is like due to like a long day for them. They obviously just played a 5-match set versus Shock into a 5-match set versus Seoul. Not an easy task, especially with the playoff, like the exhilaration behind like all the what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even remember the word. But like how much pressure is on them in that situation is like definitely a factor in this. But the biggest reason I say this is that like throughout this whole series, it seemed like Dragons were like slowly losing control of their playstyle. They were losing how like coordinated they looked and how well they were executing their defenses and stuff like that. Because there were times where they were on defense, and like I said, I would compare them most to Shock out of any of the playoff teams, where they enjoy holding their space, baiting people in, and then finding the right opportunity to re-aggress. Instead, you see Lip jumping over walls on Dorado. You see these duels taking place that don't make sense. You see teams running into Roadhog. So it's like they obviously didn't like lose the ability to make the proper decisions, but they were not as fast or not as accurate, at least, at reading these situations and finding the best way of adapting to them. Fatigue must have been mad, yeah, of course, and it's not an excuse. Like I said, Seoul was just clearly the better team in this series, but it sucks to go out like that when you're showing like you could have done better, and you've shown you have done better moments before, like hours before you were playing better than this. It's just such a shame to see Dragons go out like this. Obviously a very good season for them, nothing to be ashamed of, but I think they definitely, based on their season performance, they are a caliber team to be in the grand finals. But Seoul doing their due diligence, playing a lot cleaner today than they did yesterday. Again, a bit of a slow start, I would say. The first Koth map did not look like they had much control over. The one point they did win was because of a C9. But they ramped up throughout the series. They had much better patience, much better control. Their ultimate economy was looking really, really good just across the board. And yeah, really good showing. If I'm Shock, I am a little bit worried, but I still think that a lot of this series was not Seoul finding the outplays, but more Shanghai overextending themselves, overexposing themselves when the situation didn't call for it. And I think Shock's stability, especially on defense, their rock-solid defenses, their rock-solid Koth rounds where they have control, are going to carry them through these series. And I think with some proper map choices, stuff like Volskaya's, where you see Seoul struggle, probably something like a Hollywood, which typically has very specific set plays. Seoul has looked like a team on these types of maps that struggle to adapt to the way teams are handling defenses. And Shock has shown that they can throw curveballs whenever they need to. They've shown they can be adaptable, not just like mid-series, but mid-map even, between rounds even. So I expect a Shock victory tomorrow, but honestly, it's very hard to say. Depends on which Seoul shows up. I imagine it'll be somewhat similar to today. Well, they'll ramp up throughout the series. But I think when it comes down to it, I give the edge to Shock, especially on 2CP and on probably hybrid maps, where there's typically a lot more set plays to be made. And I would give, it's first to 4, right? So I'd say maybe like a 4-2 Shock victory. I think once Seoul gets going and they get some counterpick maps in, stuff like their Dorado was looking really strong. They've got some chance to take some maps, but I think Shock is just the better team right now. They've got a better understanding of the meta. They've got more flexibility, and they've got more unpredictability, not only in their compositions and their playstyle, but just in their roster as well. Just their playstyles between their players can change up the game. So yeah, really good series from this morning. Tomorrow should be a hell of a game. It is tomorrow, right? It's not Sunday. I'm not crazy. But yeah, heartbreaker for Dragons. They've been doing so well this whole season, just to have it end on a long day like that.